Tell you what.
Yeah, the reason why I'm going to Florida this weekend is I think this year is year 15 or 16 of my fantasy football league. So, Florida is where we're all from. So I'm going to be going back home and staying with my parents. But no, we're on year 16. We've gone to North Carolina and other places and stuff. But yeah, or else I would have gone to Daytona. And as a matter of fact, I saw so much activity on social media that I think it's going to be one that I go to next year. It just seems like a great.
That's always been a show that's been on the radar. It's just there's no retics out there.
Right, exactly.
Everything else is cool though.
Yeah, but I mean, I've learned now it's more about the connections and talking to people and all that good stuff.
That's why we went to Dallas every year.
Exactly. Even the last Dallas with minimal large constrictors. But speaking of vending shows, welcome everyone. This is episode 108 of the Retic Lounge. I'm Lucas and this is Nathan. And we are going to be joined by David Levinson today. And we are going to be talking about vending Reptile Expos. It's something I've never done. I don't think, Nathan, you've done it either. And just about every show I go to, I see Dave. So I like want to pick his brain from like, what does it take to get a table, to setting up the table, the sales portion, how much money are you blowing on animals yourself? Do you ever make profit? Right? Like that's
driving across the country,
going out and getting drinks and strip clubs. I don't know what people do. But I'm interested to see his perspective of it all. And then for those of you that do know Dave, I know that he's gone on the Trap Talk network a bunch of times. Dave is just a great personality and cool person to talk to about reptiles or just about anything in general. So I'm excited to jump into this one.
A fishing expert. Talked with him about just fish species out in Utah for like 45 minutes at the last show I saw him at. So yeah, and how he can't find a rosy boa in Utah.
No,
rubber boa.
Rubber boa. Sorry. Oh, true.
Way cool.
Way cooler. But before we jump into that, because we haven't had our big ad yet, but they are officially a sponsor, I do want to remind you guys, we are now sponsored by Cold Blooded Cafe. I've been using them over the last year. Never been disappointed with any other packaging. If you guys do want to use our discount code, it's going to be Reptile Lounge 20. You'll get 20% off on that. We're excited to have them on board and to get that ad kind of circulating through. For those of you that don't know, our behind the scenes guy for the Reptile Lounge network in general is Adler Romero. He's one of our sponsors with AE Foundry. He does all the video work and he does a lot of the promotional stuff that we have and that we do. And he just moved and started a new job with Maximum Reptile Cages. So we've been kind of giving him some leeway and breaks on having to do all that. So we'll get that here circulating soon. But again, want to shout out our Patreon members. That link is down below. We've had quite a few new members that are joining on. It's as active as it's ever been. And I think total now we have over 100 members, which I think is a really big, I mean, that's a big deal to me. I can appreciate every single one of them.
Yeah, it's cool to see the diversity and not just people, but where our people in the Patreon are coming from. So a lot of diverse opinions, but a good group of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that differing opinions kind of, I don't know. I've always been a fan of gathering information from everyone and just collecting and using what I believe in and trying to experiment with things. But Nate, you got anything else before we jump in?
Just that we got to advocate for Dave a little bit. I've done some product modeling and stuff with the snakes with my pit vipers, and he's done a lot of free modeling for pit viper, and they have not reciprocated in any way. So if anything, this will be a social media call to pit viper to, send Dave a care package.
Yeah, check the minute marker there, Nathan, at 5 minutes and make a clip right there and tag me.
Oh, no. Dave and I will get into it. Don't you worry.
Whether you've poured your heart and soul into your reptile business or you've just begun your business journey, AE Foundry has you covered with next level expertise in graphic design, motion graphics, videography, photography, and so much more. If you've been dying for a new logo for your reptile business, motion graphics for your current logo, a new website, or need assistance making your video podcast come to life, then listen carefully. AE Foundry's mission places storytelling at its core. AE Foundry believes that a distinctive story and background are the driving forces that set your brand apart. In today's market, consumers seek more than just products. They crave a connection built on trust with the brands they cherish. AE Foundry is committed to empowering small businesses and fostering authenticity that resonates with their consumers. Reach out to them and let them help you craft a visual narrative that helps establish a genuine and lasting connection with your audience. To contact AE Foundry, email them at aromero@aefoundry.com or on Instagram at AE Foundry. When it comes to housing your retics, trust me, you're going to want an enclosure that will be just as strong and durable as your reticulated python. The Heartland Reptile Enclosure is next level tough and will outlive you and your retic by several generations. Heartland Reptile Enclosures are designed and manufactured out of powder-coated aluminum to provide the highest quality and longevity available in the reptile enclosure. What makes them even better is they are lighter than your PVC and plastic enclosures out there and are extremely tough. Stop playing around with plastic enclosures for your large constrictors and step up your enclosure game with the Heartland Reptile Enclosure. To inquire about one of these enclosures, speak to Jordan himself at Heartland Reptiles on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Here on TRL, we preach about the importance of using hooks, feeding tongs, and other tools with your reticulated python all the time. Animal Equipment by Stoney not only has all the tools you need for any snake you keep, but they have the absolute best hooks on the market. What sets Animal Equipment by Stoney's hooks apart from the other guys is their polycarbonate hook ends that provide a warm feel that won't disturb or bother your retic, ensuring a positive interaction from the get-go. Since 2008, AE Stoney has been supplying zoos, herpetologists, and other animal professionals with their tools. It's time for you to step your hook game up and buy an AE Stoney hook. To learn more and purchase one of their amazing products, visit aestoney.com. All right, let's go ahead and bring them on, man.
All right.
Dave, what's going on, man?
Not a lot, guys. I appreciate the Pit Vipers plug. I didn't want to be the one to bring that up, but I'm still waiting. Yeah, I've been naked a lot with those glasses on, and you're right. No
Either that or pull me
reciprocation.
back in with the retics and send me home with another box of glasses, and I'll send out the care package.
That'd be nice. I like the moo cow ones. I like all the animal related ones. I'll just put it that way.
You want to know what's even sad about this is I've never done any of that for any of them, and I've had Nathan send me a pair. So even I have a pair and you don't.
I did send you a pair. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, I have bought a couple bootlegs since then. I'm not proud of it, but you know, I can't afford that flex, man. I fuck them up too much.
I can appreciate that. That's why I don't spend money on sunglasses and I don't spend money on wallets. I lose them both and mess them up way too much.
Oh, I agree. Hey, where you guys want to start? What was that?
Said, how you been since we last saw you in Dallas?
Well, I've been good. You know, just another year. Herping season was short but sweet. A couple good days out where I got to see. I saw my first coach whip in the state of Missouri, and my first coach whip ever.
Is that where you're at, by the way, Missouri?
Yeah, I'm out in like Mark Twain National Forest in Missouri.
Nice. Okay, cool. That's a great place to be.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm in my neighbor's driveway because he has Starlink, and it's the only way this is possible.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, there you go.
Okay, thank you, Elon.
Yeah, I got a backhoe behind me.
How long have you been out in Missouri?
Since Ben passed away.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think June of 2027 or 2017. You know, I never really thought I'd like it out here, but it's kind of nice out here.
Quiet.
Very quiet. Very
and
quiet.
that's I don't know. I feel like the older I get, the more I look forward to that. Like I'm in the greater San Antonio area and I cannot wait to get away.
Yeah. No, we yell at kids skateboarding by our cars now. That's just where we're at. It's the progression of life we all go on.
We
So-
once were those kids, now we yell at them.
Right, exactly. Damn right. Dave, if you don't mind, and I know that this is going to be really basic because I know a lot of the reptile industry is aware of who you are, but I actually haven't heard your kind of your story on how you got into reptiles and what that whole thing looked like. And with that, I'd also like you, if you can, just get into what you're working with.
Right. Started buying in Buffalo, New York back in 2002. I got out of high school the same year. A local pet store that was really nice pet store called Markheim's Pets, right in Buffalo, about 15 minutes from my home. Really nice reptile department. Nice little corner display with Amazon tree boas. Every time they had a litter, I'd always get a new color. A gentleman that worked there, his name was Ken Leach. He worked the reptile department on the weekends, and he was breeding Kenyan sand boas and already been in the industry for years. So to tell you the truth, I started going in there every weekend. He started telling me about the industry, the way to conduct yourself at shows, how no price is ever in stone, always ask for a discount, always sex your animals after you get them, the basic stuff. Told me to buy a copy of the Bible, brought it to work one weekend to sell it to me. And yeah, just kind of guided me. Every weekend it was a different conversation, to be honest with you. But I think my first big buys I made in the industry around that time when it came to smart buys was a salmon boa from Rich Eiley at salmonboa.com. And I picked up a lipstick albino from Tom Burke. I found the invoice for that recently. I actually think I spent 3 times on that animal that you could have spent on a normal albino. And then back to Rich Eiley, I got 3 Haas double het sunglows.
Awesome.
And one didn't make it to breeding size. One bred and proved out het albino. The other one proved, had a huge litter, wasn't het albino. And that kind of got the ball rolling once I figured out I could actually do it. I didn't breed crested geckos. Crested geckos bred themselves when I had them.
Right. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, I set up like an accidental bioactive with crested geckos in it, and I used the crested gecko babies to buy boa food, vision cages. But I've always kind of had a hillbilly way about this in the hobby, even though I was in Buffalo when I was doing this. So like, I had a great deal one time to buy the vision cages, the like 5-foot long ones, the gray ones.
Uh-huh.
And I had a Ford Focus at the time. And I took all 3 of them and I stacked them all on top and ratchet strapped them down. And they matched my car though, because it was a great car. But I think they were about 1.5 times the height of my actual vehicle as I'm driving away with these things. Guy thought I was crazy, but I got home and everything was fine. And I'll be honest, I don't think there's ever been a cage as good as the vision cages. I just
They're
wish I could
pretty
afford them
phenomenal.
now.
Right, dude, have you seen like the 6-footers are like $1,400?
The worst part is, no, you mean used, right? I think the 6-footers brand new are like $1,200.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, they're like, I don't know what happened. They switched out who was
Owners.
Yeah, owners, and they blew. I mean, at least that owner had the idea that like they do last forever.
They last forever. The
They're
glass is
phenomenal
the only
cages.
thing that might go away. But no, yeah, I love those, man. I did all my first breeding in those. I did belly heat at the time in an apartment that I wasn't even supposed to have snakes. But just to rewind and then I'll fast forward. So when I first started buying though, I was working in a factory and I saved like one of my 4 checks every month and I drive to Cleveland, Ohio to do the Cleveland show, or I'd go to Columbus, or I'd do both in a weekend just to buy some stuff. And I would come home with like a couple rainbow boas, and then I'd come home with a couple Burmese pythons, and I get carpet pythons. Is he okay? Can you at least still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good. We're gonna keep going, and he'll probably
you're
text
good.
me if he's having issues.
Just want to make sure it wasn't on my end. I'm out here in the driveway.
Right.
It's just my connection to my USB. I didn't miss anything. Sorry, guys.
No, you're good. You guys can edit. But yeah, so I bought a pair of every species, and I don't know who it was, but somebody jokingly called me a Noah's Ark breeder when I was like 18 or 19 years old. Like I said, I was just fascinated with everything and where.
Did you have a beard back then too?
No, I had this. I had the Taylor Thompson, that home improvement ponytail with the shaved sides.
There you go.
And I had like a goatee that grew on like both sides a little bit, and then I had a mustache.
Top knot and a mustache.
Yeah, I'll say not a top knot. It's more like a ponytail, but top. Don't make it gay by calling it a top knot. But no, yeah. So I had that look at first, but I'll be honest with you, I kept that look when I was buying. But as soon as I produced my first litter of boas, I didn't want to look like some asshole who breed reptiles. I just, and you guys kind of going back to the shows and the way you present yourself, it took a very long time for me able to get away with the shit I get away with at shows. At first I was very straight laced about it to an extent. But I always talk to people, you got to be true to your brand. And, some people they copy what, maybe somebody else is doing because of the professionalism. I always tell people your logo's got to look like you in a sense. There's got to be something about it that is you. And I think the same way goes for your booth atmosphere. So, right off the bat, my first show would have been Charlotte, North Carolina, on the very first Repticon they ever had. I had been vending about 3 years prior to that. One guy was a Retic guy. I'm struggling to remember his name. I should remember his name. I worked with this really fat guy named Skinny that was Jewish. We would bring
great name.
Oh yeah, we would bring broken glass cages and melamine racks and whatever animals he was picking up to flip. I did that for about 2 years, maybe a year. I can't remember. And then I worked with Limey down in North Carolina for about, I want to say about a year or two. And those were my best years just because Limey always had a really incredible variety on his table. And, working behind his table leading up to me doing my own table really got my feet wet in a way where when I got behind my own table, it just kind of came naturally. And, where I kind of try to explain people, you got to find your strengths. My family's all car salesmen. You ask somebody to pass the butter and there's a sales pitch. Everything's always selling something, I guess you could say. So, you talked about how we talked about fishing. And the thing is I've always felt that one good thing to have as a salesman is keeping people around your table as long as possible. Now, I'll talk fishing with anybody. I love fishing, but when somebody's by my table, I might look at a watch. I might look at a shirt, a hat. I'll find something that I could spit off one baseball fact about your team in 1989 and then sit back and listen to you talk for 30 minutes. And it's not like I'm disinterested in what you're saying, but I am definitely trying to keep you around my table a little bit longer by having small talk.
Right.
But like I said, it's kind of hard to do that unless you talk to a lot of people. Or I listen to a wide range of podcasts. The only podcast I don't listen to are reptile podcasts.
Yep, I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah, and it's peculiar. I think with doing the podcast thing, way back I did Herp House Rock. You guys may have watched a couple episodes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
It was raw, it was silly, it was unadvertised, it was a show up and a conversation. I had never watched a podcast leading up to doing podcasts. Now I've probably watched about 1,000 podcasts since, and it's like I understand everything about it so much more than before, but I'm still trying to find a way to keep it to where I was before. Right. Kind of like sitting out in this driveway right now to do the podcast right now.
Right.
So again, trying to stay a little true to a brand, but I don't know if my brand's homeless or not. That might actually be my brand, but nonetheless, I'm just gonna keep on babbling on if you guys want to keep it going. I feel like
you're good, man.
But I just want to know, when you got started in vending, how did you kind of approach which shows you were going to vend at? Was that just experience running running shows with your other friend, and going through the circuit a little bit with him, or?
Well, so my Southeast time was all Georgia, South Carolina, a little bit of Tennessee, but a lot of North Carolina. Back in like the mid 2000s, because I think I moved there in like 2005, Repticon kind of had the Southeast locked down. You had Jay coming with the Myrtle Beach show, and you had a few other ones pass by, but for the most part, it always just been Repticon. So that was kind of always the show series I was used to. And of course, living in Charlotte, my very first show was Charlotte. But then after that, the South Carolina show, which was about an hour and a half away, I did the Columbia show pretty religiously. The Raleigh show back then was unbelievable. It was big. There was always something exciting going on there. So I did that one a lot. And then the Atlanta would be the other big one that you'd see me at. But no, I stayed pretty true to those for the 5 years that I was living in North Carolina, whether I was vending on my own or vending with somebody else. But then, ironically, I moved to Buffalo, New York, back to Buffalo, New York after 5 years, downsized considerably to get married, and then rebuilt it kind of the way I always wanted it without all that stuff that was dragging me down that I was picking up along the way. And it's kind of a bad thing to say, but I have reset a couple times on what my motivations have been in the hobby. But long story short, just I got back to Buffalo.
A lot of us.
Yeah, I think that is true to everybody, man. I always joke around, and you probably heard me say it, but like, ball pythons are a good gateway drug for the hobby. Like, it's a really hard species to fail at if you put minimal time into it. It gives people a little bit of confidence to maybe move on to another species. If you fail at ball pythons, you might want to just give up. Like, if you can't get one clutch out of a ball python, that's one of the easier species outside of a colubrid. But like I said, it's a confidence builder. And, I don't know if you guys follow William Philippek.
Yeah, he actually bought a pair of Soleils off of me. He's a really cool dude.
Awesome. I love Will. When Ben passed away, Will was working with Ben. He used to come over and help me all the time just with the big constrictors. But the reason I bring him up is, I did a podcast with him a few months ago, and, he likes to go hard in the paint on ball pythons. Loves to talk some good shit. And respect. I'm all about it. But, like, then we get to the part about how he talks about how he built this great collection around him. He's talking about all these different species. And I'm all like, well, where'd you get the money to do that? And he's like, oh, man, ball pythons, dude. I made so much money in ball pythons. So, he, in my opinion, is a perfect example about how, maybe you kind of come in and, chase the colors and, go after that species. But, like, you can change at any time and still be successful in both species. And, the reality is some of these species we work with, especially a lot of the dwarf pythons from Australia, I mean, that's labor of love. And, it's nice that people pay a little more now, but there was a long time there where people didn't pay shit for that stuff. And people still went through the force feeding for 6 months and everything involved in getting those babies started. So, like I said, I treat every species equally. I do talk a little shit about retics, but, I'm an asshole.
I do too, and I breed them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a retic podcast, and we
shit on them all the time.
All the time.
I try to be real, but, I do say some mean things, but today I won't, because, here's the thing in the end of the day. 50% of your community is twice my size. Like, I've seen you at the shows. You're all way bigger than me. So, I can tiptoe a little bit, but I know where to draw the line and being an asshole.
I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about that. So I'm going through that phase right now. I did, strictly retics for 5 years when I started getting back into it in my 20s and breeding snakes. And now in the last year, I've got Amazon tree boa, I have chondros, I have Sri Lankan pythons, I have carpet pythons, I have imports now. I'm about to get Pataeus carinata. Like I'm up to like 8 species that just blew up, and you know what? Maybe in 5 more years, I'll shrink down again and I'll become more focused. But I will say that this growing portion and getting new species is because of the retics. But I'm having a blast, dude. I'm loving. I feel like a kid all over again, like working with new species. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, one thing with the hobby too, and there's so much fun stuff you could do in it, and there's just so many ways you can come in the hobby and have a good time that's completely different than everybody else. So like I said, you know me, I overlap in communities. I bounce around. I try to hang on and talk to everybody, to be honest with you. I just enjoy the conversations. And like, you know, when you go to the shows and, you know, you find someone as passionate about something as you are, even if you're not even into their species, a lot of times you learn something new that's worth knowing.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I mean, Nathan and I were just saying earlier that you know, going to the shows now is not even about going and seeing the reptiles anymore.
Yeah.
It's just about connecting.
Yeah. I don't wander as much as I used to. I don't know why either. It's not like I don't love the animals any less than I did before. I
Right.
don't know if it's the traffic jams along the way. I mean, sometimes you'll see me run around like a smaller show beforehand, and then, you know, when it comes to like a Tinley, you might not see me at all.
We also want to thank VivTech Products for being an affiliate sponsor of the Retic Lounge. Stop by VivTech Products for the best UV spectrum lighting on the market that will enhance and improve your snake's overall well-being and health. Visit vivtechproducts.com and use the code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Again, visit vivtechproducts.com and use our affiliate code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Looking for the perfect accessories for your hatchlings or juvenile retics? Look no further than Heli Guy Serpents. Our sponsor, Chris Sexton, is coming in hot with an amazing 3D printer, creating top-notch perches and other caging accessories for your beloved pets. Enrich your retics environment with their high-quality products. Use our promo code TRL10 for a 10% discount on your purchase. Visit them today at heliguyserpents.com and start giving your pets the best. Heli Guy Serpents, the premier source for 3D printed caging accessories. Again, that's www.heliguyserpents.com and use our promo code TRL10 for 10% off all of your 3D printed accessories today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the more I've gone to shows, I mean, I haven't been to more than a handful of the NARBC shows, but I am a little bit plugged in to the point where I know kind of in advance what's going to be there and what I want to see. So like I might search that out, but then the rest of the time I'm just there for the hang.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's the people, man. You know, best example I have of that is the March Tinley at COVID that got canceled. A lot of us still went because we were already halfway there. We already made up our minds we wanted to be there. But the nice thing about that Tinley was all my favorite people that I spend 90% of my time with were the ones that showed up. And it was like every other Tinley I've ever been to, if not maybe even a little bit funner.
Right. Right. Dave, if you don't mind, what I'm imagining, I think like a valuable piece of this episode, I think what we can do is we drive in a lot of new listeners. And by new listeners, I'm talking about like aspiring breeders or people that are working on their first or second clutch, right? And there's this idea that at some point they're going to want to do a show. So can you take us to the process of what like in today's day and age, right? Like don't take us back to Repticon back in 2005, but
Okay.
in today's day and age, what does it take to secure a booth and what does
what
let's start
investments do you have to make in order to be able to vend your first show?
Well, we talked about presentation. You know, the bare minimal, a nice display for your animals. There's a lot of expensive ways of doing that. There's a lot of inexpensive ways of doing that. I could go out and buy a tower, probably about $250, $300. I can go to Walmart and buy 5 of those acrylic bins that hold shoes with the air holes already in the side that are crystal clear, and they're $6 a piece. All of a sudden, I have a tower for, honestly, $30. Seems kind of silly, but honestly, they're polycarbonate. They're super clear. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is those displayed on your table look amazing. They're clear. You know, you can see the animal well. You don't have to start with the $300 tower. And I built towers, at least for a living, for a while there. I'm not trying to shit on the brand, but like, you know, ease in however you need to ease in. Business cards, of course, right off the bat. A lot of people get spooked if you don't have a card. They make it seem like, you know, maybe you don't want to be found. banner, it's not expensive to get a banner. You could buy a cheap $50 one. You could buy a $200 one. You could buy one that takes up half the building like Bob Vu. Respect,
Yep.
man. It's a strong ass flex.
His marketing is on another level.
It's great.
Yeah, between the Pornhub knockoff logo, between the Dragon Ball Z stuff, like
Yep.
he just understands in
does.
his own way.
I mean,
But-
and he's understanding his audience, the reptile community, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to go into a pharmaceutical rep with that kind of a logo, but
Are you saying that's all we care about in the reptile industry is Pornhub and Dragon Ball Z, Lucas?
I'd say a vast majority do appreciate both those things.
Well, unless you live in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, then you can. Well, now
One's
Texas
illegal
too.
here.
Yeah, I found out the hard way when I visited. Real sad times, man. Might never come back again.
That's good.
But
It's a damn shame.
honestly, just figure out something to make sure species look the best. Substrate, there's a lot of different ways I go with that. I always promote a brand called Alpha Dry. It's a silly thing to promote, but it's little recycled squares of paper. They use it in mouse labs for breeding. It's super absorbent, lint-free or dust-free for the most part. I think it makes the presentation look a lot better. That was one thing that I always really loved about Vend's setup. White on white on white. No room
Clean.
for error. Everything always looked good. So that's not a bad way to keep yourself in check at the shows, is maybe consider white display cases. I'll be honest, like black ones, sometimes you won't see a problem. That's nice and all, but white ones, again, you can't slip. So again, banner, everything else. I like to try to stay local, maybe for your first one. And another thing too, with like the bigger shows, like you guys are like, how do you get into Reptilian Nation? How do you get an NARBC? How do you do a Daytona show? A lot of those are waiting lists. Even some Repticons, if you're not fast enough in the Southeast, you can't get tables. So, I hate to say, you got to be a little responsible. That, or you got to be very popular in the industry where some guys are going to let you F off a little bit and still give you tables at their shows. But that's years and years of work. Don't assume you're coming in and getting any favors from anybody.
Right.
And then, another nice thing too, where I talked about how I kind of worked with Limey and other guys, where I didn't always have my own animals at the shows, sometimes I would have a display of my own. But I will say, if somebody's going to be nice enough to let you sit on their table, don't make your display all that matters if you usually help them with everything. When you seem biased to what they have on their table and maybe they're nice enough to let you use their space, at least respect it. Don't force people's hand to look at your stuff. If they get to you, they get to you, but bad manners at a show, especially for somebody who's maybe going to bring you out to Reptilian Nation when you can't get a table anywhere.
Right.
So like I said, just conduct. And again, what's your brand? You don't have to come out swinging with the best logo right off the bat. You don't have to have the flashiest table. And again, I've been doing this for a while, and I kind of like that I can get away with it, but sometimes I don't even put my banner up. It's kind of a scummy thing, but I do it because I can get away with it. And that is the God honest truth. But no, think about when you walk through your shows and what you're looking at and decide what you want to reflect on yours. If you show up and your product looks like shit, you're probably not going to sell any, and you can't go home complaining about it. Put a small effort into it. And again, put a small effort into trying to connect with some of the people that are willing to sit in front of your table.
Right. Yeah. So you talked about that earlier about trying to have that small talk, right? And like a lot of the conversation being outside of like reptile related conversation.
Yeah.
How do you go? I mean, how can you share how that's like reflected in your ability to make a sale?
Well, in my eyes, first off, my dad always gave me advice when it came to being a car salesman. And the way he put it was, if somebody comes to the lot, they're looking for a car. If they like you, they'll buy it from you. So the same basic logic at a show. All these people are shopping. I don't know what they're shopping for. Honest sales is not impossible with a little bit of white lies in there, if that makes sense. It's going to sound shady. I'm going to come back to that. But essentially what I'm trying to say is, I watch a lot of sports. I do a lot of fishing. I watch a lot of History Channel. I listen to a lot of politics. I do everything from everything. I listen to all the things that I guess you could say normal people listen to. So again, you know, when somebody's by my table, people scan and miss things. I scan and miss things. If I can engage you with a conversation where you're not just staring at me, but at least looking at my animals and talking for maybe another 15 to 30 seconds, there may be something there they didn't realize I had. And if they skim by too fast, they miss it. So the small talk is genuine. I do want to talk to everybody I see at the shows, but of course, I am basing my conversation on what you're wearing or something about you. And, you know, I'm doing that because I know you're going to like it. Like, if you're going to wear that shirt, you're going to talk about that sports team. And, you know, some people straight up say, I don't really give a shit about sports. I bought this at a thrift store. And I say, cool. And I walk away. Throw in the towel, man. Sometimes you got to know when to walk away.
Right.
But, you know, one other thing I want to jump back to, like, talking about table presentation. You know, when I walk through a show, I don't usually look at deli cups if I think I want to find something interesting. There are diamonds in the rough at shows, but when I have my table presentation at the shows, I put my nicer, higher end stuff in displays, and I put my lower to mid range in display or in the deli cups. My logic behind that is when I walk a show, I don't look at deli cups because I'm looking for expensive. Also, when people are at the show not looking for expensive, sometimes the display cases scare them off a little bit, where they might not see that inexpensive animal, where the deli cups are a little less scary. They sometimes spend a little more time over there. So you do run risk of something walking off your table. I find it to be very rare if you're paying attention to your surroundings. I do 30, 40 shows a year. It's very rare I lose anything. I can probably count them all on one hand over 20 years. Like, it just doesn't happen. But, you know, California it happened. White Plains, New York it happened. And I think one Colorado show, Denver it happened. Other than that, you know, most cities, most shows I go to, people are not trying to steal. And if they are, usually they suck at it.
Yeah, you hear about it a couple times a year. You very rarely hear about, you know, just stuff walking off and it not being recovered or some kind of lead.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, even the most recent examples have been reptile people doing that shit, and that did not turn out well. So, yeah, people are typically bad at it.
Yep. Won't be the first or last time that happens.
No, what I will say to add to what you were saying about having the deli cup presentation with your display, the nicer displays, I think there's also something to be said that having the lower end animals on the deli cup absolutely like will help those people who might find the displays a little bit intimidating for the price range, but it's also creating more value for your more expensive stuff. Whether people realize it off the bat or not. You know, if you have a table that has some deli cups and then you also have these amazing displays, you're signaling, and you know, a person's psychology is looking at the deli cups and they're looking at the displays and they see the value in so even though we have a value market for the snake that we're putting in the display, by having animals in deli cups, you're making those display animals look more valuable.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing too at these shows, even the bigger shows, those low end animals pay for your weekend. Sometimes those low end animals are all the profit you make on that weekend. I have a lot of shows. I don't sell an animal over $500, but I might sell 10 to 30 animals under $500.
Right.
So a lot more talking, seems like more work. Feels pretty gratifying because it's constant stimulation for you as a salesman. But like,
yeah,
you know, it's you know, you never really know what's going to make your weekend. And I've had some very surprised customers. You know, a couple that stand out to me, and I hope they're listening but not listening, was my first scaleless ball python sale at a show. Nashville, Repticon, they were $7,000 at the time. And this gentleman came over and he was wearing a Rick and Morty t-shirt.
Nice.
I think maybe cargo shorts, bluish hair with a lot of black showing through, and sandals. And he asked if he could hold it. And I'm all like, man, I'm like, it's an expensive animal. But I was like, here's the deal. I was all like, what I typically tell people is this. I don't want to let everybody handle your animal before you buy it. If you're telling me you're really thinking about it, I'm happy taking it out. But you don't want somebody holding your snake 20 times before you buy it. So, and that's like a way of saying, hey, you know, have an understanding we're trying to keep everything, you know, clean and healthy. You know, and most people immediately are very like, you know, I understand. I just kind of wanted to hold it. In his case, he said, no, I'm serious. So I took him serious, of course, and I let him hold it, and he ended up buying it. And because of that sale, a father and son were sitting next to me, and he saw that happen, and he spent, I think, about $2,000 on scale sets. So in a matter of just like 5 minutes, I reduced the animal down a little bit. It was like $8,000 in sales, 6 on the one, 2 on the other, or 5 and 2. It might have been 7. But one sale made the other one happen. And if I wouldn't have taken the one serious, I wouldn't have got the other one, and it would have been a very different weekend. To be honest with you, I think that was one of the few good sales I had that entire weekend altogether. And I've had a couple other ones like that at the shows, just where, you know, you kind of just have to feel people out. I don't like handling high-end animals at a show. I think it's irresponsible. Yeah, I went over to Tim Bailey's table at Daytona because he had the wrought iron on his table for the blood python. And I asked him to hold it. And I was like, man, just so you know, I haven't held anything all day. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. I was like, no, but seriously, man, I haven't held anything. I just want to hold this thing. I took it more serious than he did when it came to, like, you know, not fucking with animals at a show. But again, you know, conducting yourself at the show, you got to do it however you're going to do it. That's just my way. I don't know. I think I lost my train of thought.
Well, no, that led me to something that I wanted to touch on was how are you, you know, maintaining the health of your animals that you're taking
Oh
on the
shit,
road with you
true.
or taking
Yeah.
to shows? Like, what are kind of the protocols there? What preventable measures are you taking between shows? That kind of thing.
Okay. So Ball Pythons Volume 2, Dave and Tracy Barker, The War on Mites. If you haven't read it, I don't know why you haven't read it yet. They should honestly just take that one chapter out and just sell that as its own little book in the hobby. It'd probably do pretty well for itself.
Probably would. That's actually a really good idea.
Our little pamphlet, and we can just hand it out at reptile shows like
Yeah,
Jehovah's Witnesses.
we'll get with Darian, and there's a chapstick and a deodorant that comes with it too. But
we'll start bugging him soon.
hey, man, he's all about that marketing. He'll give it to you. So my biggest fear about a show is mites. You know, mites are gonna spread disease in your collection. Mites are a very, very rough label to have on yourself in the hobby. But the reality of mites are there's nobody in this hobby that hasn't dealt with them. And there's probably a lot of us in the hobby that have dealt with them 5 to 40 times over the course of 10 years. It's just the way it works sometimes. Every time you learn something new, you know, and along the way, you probably learn the wrong way of doing it too. Me personally, when my displays are not in use, I like to do a little piece of no pest strip. I usually put a little no pest strip on my display cases in between, take it out a couple days beforehand before I put the animal in there. God forbid something comes home, at least on the displays, it's treated. When it comes to the animals coming home from the shows, if I'm not doing any handling, typically they're just going to go back in a treated bin, and that's simple enough. If I've got a section of the table, let's say maybe the deli cup section, because typically people who buy pets that are a little more lower end are going to want to handle more. Those animals, a lot of times too, when I first bring them home, I might do a small piece of no pest strip in there for a day with no water, and then take it out and put the water back in. No pest strips are in the war against mites. It was something that I guess was kind of compared to like an FDA approved thing, something that zoos use. There's a lot of pet stores, a lot of old school guys use it. But, you know your species. You know, if you have garter snakes or hognose, you're not doing this. There's a lot of species that can be sensitive. So this conversation I'm having with you now is more about the pythons and boa guys.
Sure.
So they're, you know, again, it's a great little part of the book to read, and you know, every species is gonna be different when it comes to that. But I've been to reptile shows where I've seen guys walking through the shows with a big berm, a big retic, or a big boa constrictor, and you can see the mites in the eye socket. Those are just raining all over people's tables.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's not be naive. It's better to not let it ever happen. And the reality is, you know, it's like you're going to bring home 100 mites, you're going to bring home one. And a little piece of no pest strip is probably going to kill that one mite within 24 hours of getting home, to where you're not going to have a catastrophic problem with what you're selling. But also, if you fuck up, at least own up to it a little bit and be honest. I find in this hobby, and I know we've all done it, we try to think of some crazy backstory. Oh man, my rat order this week must have had mites on it. Fuck me.
Or by betting.
Yeah, or my bedding came in with mites. Holy shit. I actually got a ping on Morph Market one time because the guy bought an animal from me, and I just started buying cypress mulch again, and it had the little wood mites on there, the white ones that run around like a mile an hour. This guy got it in, and he sent me a video of wood mites running around on his ball python. And I explained to him, this is actually something completely different. It comes in with the bedding sometimes. He wrote a pretty bad review about me. John was running at the time. He was able to get it down, but I didn't understand why my Morph Market stopped getting traction for like weeks. And then a customer finally hit me up and he said, "Hey man, I really want to buy from you, but I'm really scared about your mite problem." Then I read my review, then I knew what was happening, then the problem got solved. But again, mites are going to happen in the hobby. God forbid you sell some of the mite, work with your customer. Most people are understanding if you're not an asshole to them. It shouldn't rarely, if ever, happen. But the thing is, if you're going to do a lot of shows, if you're not cautious, you're probably going to bring a mite home eventually.
Right. And I think, I think there's a lot to be said, right? Like, I think the community demonizes mites, and you get an animal that you might buy and it might have, it has mites on it and everything. And the first person that the person does is start to talk shit. And at the end of the day, when you're buying from someone who's doing shows or you're buying from someone that has a larger collection, mites is going to happen from time to time, and it's treatable. I've spoken about that before. I'm not, I take more of the approach of, I think the community needs to be a little bit more understanding, and you need to just have the education of how to treat mites before you own a snake, period.
Yep.
It's preventative measures that make things work. And I think part of preventative measures for a new snake owner is knowing the things that can happen when you buy an animal, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I mean, no one wants mites. I've had to deal with mites twice. One when I had a smaller collection, one with a larger collection. And fortunately, my protocol was I was able to prevent it from spreading to my whole, it stayed in the single rack. So it wasn't too big of a stressor, but I'll tell you from the get-go, any breeder who has a decent sized collection that is dealing with a mite problem, it's the most stressful fucking thing that you go through. It sucks.
You chase it. And you chase it and you chase it. Eventually you can get there, but it just depends on the size of your collection and understanding you got to get every last one of them. You leave one female behind, you're fucked. She'll make a male and make more. So, but no, like I said, it's definitely something you have to deal with. And like you said, when we get in the hobby, we're starry-eyed. There's snakes everywhere. There's lizards everywhere. We're buying everything we can. The diseases, the bacterias, the mites, any kind of bug, ticks on imports. We never hear about that kind of stuff. It just never really anything. By the way, I got a little weird there. I hear things in the woods. I don't know what the fuck it is, but I'm here for a while. Could be anything. Could be anything, man. Yeah, if I look spooked out, man, I've heard it like 4 times over there. It's freaking me the fuck out right now.
If we see any like glaring eyes behind you, we'll try
we'll let you know. And at the very least, it'll make good content if you get if you get snagged by something.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, man, but it's loud. It's late, but
what do you got out there in
a
Missouri,
bear is probably what I would think.
We do have bear, but I'm probably too loud for there to be a bear around. We do have mountain lions. I'm too loud for mountain lions. There are bobcats, but I don't know.
Nothing that a big roar with a beard can't scare
mountain
off.
lions scare me more than anything out here in Utah. That's for sure.
I've seen a couple of videos of the mountain lions. Everything scares me, to be honest with you. But no, like I said, it's just weird. It sounds like metal smacking together over there. Like, if you're in like a haunted house and they wanted you to leave, they'd start making those sounds. That's kind of what I'm getting over there in the woods. So,
okay,
we got sidetracked. Let's bring it back again.
So one thing I wanted to bring up just in the basics of setting up your booth and maybe like someone who's just starting out is, are there any like essential tools, any like cleaning supplies? What are the small little things you need behind the booth that are going to help your operation run smoothly?
Tools. Well, first off, get your tablecloth, get your banner, get your displays, wherever they happen to be. Yeah, I'd like to have a those little plastic paint scrapers, those like 2 or 3 inch wide ones. Really nice to clean your display cases out with. You don't have to worry about damaging the acrylics by using the plastic. Don't get the metal ones. Always like those. Always make sure you got at least one 10 to 15-foot extension cord. You get to a lot of these shows and your power outlet is halfway across the building. Plenty of times I've had to borrow one if I didn't bring one with me. Um, Man, little things that come in handy.
Yeah,
You know,
I
it's
think
like
the
one-
extension cord is kind of the route I was thinking, is just the small things that you get to a reptile show, you realize you didn't pack it and you're like, oh shit, like I need that.
my card reader, my markers, my label
Dude, the
maker.
card reader, especially how small those things are. Shit.
I know, man. And then if you have to put them in manually, a lot of times the bank will put a 30-day hold on the money.
Nope.
Real pain in the ass. But you know, the thing is, how about this? A show bin. And every time you do a show, you're going to realize something else you don't have, and you just got to get it in the bin. A lot of us are very disciplined. Some of us show up with like whole tool cases, and I respect that. I borrow a lot of stuff. Not on purpose, it's because I'm irresponsible.
I can
so-
relate to that so much.
Yeah, I literally will walk through a show and I'll be like, I'm hungry, and people just like open coolers and feed me. It's really, like I said, I keep on joking around. I literally could be homeless and you guys don't even realize it. But no, like you said, you'll learn what tools make your job better, and you know, you'll see other people around you doing things that you'll be like, oh man, that's pretty much a genius idea. And a cart. Gotta have a cart, guys. You know, that's the one thing. If I say anything, bring a cart. You
Like
get lucky.
taking things back and forth.
Oh man, let's say this: your unload and breakdown is a fraction of the time if you got a cart. If you're bringing in things one at a time, your setup could take you 3-4 hours. I can do a 4-table setup with probably 12 displays on it. I could have the entire thing set up with lights in 45 minutes if I don't mess around.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, I'll come in about 40 minutes early. I'll spend about 30 minutes cleaning. Usually I'm good to go because I pack the animals the night before I leave. I don't really think about feeding schedule leading up to it. Sometimes I like to feed on Tuesdays, you know, give the animals a day break when you get home, get them a meal, give them a few days to digest before you get back out. You know, there are times of the year where I do get caught up doing 2 or 3 weekends in a row. And, you know, be real with the animals. You get to that third show and, you know, you got that label on the container and the animal looks like shit. Take 2 seconds and not take that animal with you. You know, show a little willpower just because it's already set up for it to be in there. You know, if you go hard for a month, it looks rough. It's going to make everything else on your table look bad. You know, if you have a super jag and it's doing one of these on your table, no one's going to be able to see anything else. You got
Right.
spider ball pythons in your table wobbling around. Nobody can see anything else. Like, it is the most distracting thing on your table, and it's taking eyes off your animals.
I will say, even as a retic person and understanding that retics are pushers, it's such a turnoff when you go to a show and you see a retic slamming their face on that corner. I don't see anything but the swollen nostrils on the vents of that
yeah,
poor
I'm like,
retic.
oh, that's gonna be fun to deal with.
Yeah, man. You know, I'd never even thought of that perspective, but you brought that image into my mind of the last 2 shows ago, the last Arlington NARBC that was out there. There was a booth that just had a retic that was just going. I was friends with the person who was vending and you know, good person, but I was like, hey, can I hold that one? Just because I was like, please stop fucking pushing, like please.
Yeah. No, like I said, distractions. You know, like I said, I can think of a few ball pythons, a few boas, a few carver pythons. You know, even like palmetto corn snakes with those giant eyes on the table, man, very distracting. You know, some people love it, some people hate it. I don't know. Just you stand in front of a table, you know it's going to draw your attention. Assume it's going to draw other people's attention also.
Right. You know, and one of the biggest reasons why I haven't wanted to do any shows is because I work mostly with locality retics, and I haven't found the value of going to a show and my cheapest animal being $1,500. And that's kind of why I got into the popwin carpets as well, because those animals, you know, they sell for $350, right? And so I'm waiting to start to produce some lower end stuff before I go out there, and so that way I can, you know, I'm just not, I guess, catering to the locality Retic people, so that I have something that more people would want to be interested in. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, my thoughts are, you know, your product. You know that there's a very low percentage chance that somebody's going to walk into a show looking for a dwarf retic for $1,500 to $2,500. I think you guys know as well as I do, if you have that kind of money to spend, you probably know where to find it, and you're probably going to do it online. You know, there are some people at the shows, there might be like a spontaneity buy. Like I said, I sold a boa for $2,500 to a guy in a polo t-shirt. It was his birthday, and his wife told him he needed a smaller boa constrictor for the grandkid, and his boas were 6 or 7 feet long. So he bought a $2,500 pet because he liked the way it looked.
Right.
I would never imagine that animal to have sold at that show. I think my second largest sale that weekend was $140. But it just happened to work out that way. Small little show in Tennessee and a little strip mall. You
Right.
never know, but it's just, you can't bank on it. That's why typically where I will bring some high end of the shows, I just know my high end's going to sell at home.
Right, exactly. And I mean, and that's another thing as well. The only stuff that really is left over from 2023 for me is the only one single mainland pairing I'll ever do, and it's a head ocelot clutch. But yeah, my locality stuff is gone. You know, typically by month 6, I have 25 babies sold. So, but I think it would be cool also to just have at a show and display 5 or 6 different localities. But again, I think I'm waiting until I get into these other species I'm working with, and I'd like to diversify, because I don't think it's ever going to be an advantageous or a break even thing if I just have locality animals being displayed, and they're, and even if it's $1,500 for a male, and I'll take at a show on a Sunday, I'm sure I'd be willing to take $1,000, right? Like,
Sure.
but still, it's just one of those things. I don't know that a lot of people are going to a Reptile Expo and saying, let's see what locality retics there are.
No, and one thing I always say to keep in consideration as a seller is, if you're at a show that is typically a good show for vendors, a lot of times that's vendor money coming over to your table to buy a dwarf retic at the end. It's not necessarily a walker. So, there's some shows I make more money on Sunday than Saturday because vendors will have a good weekend. There might be something that I have they like, and if I do, hopefully I sell it to them.
Right.
So
That's a good point.
yeah. So keep that in mind. But like you said, the general public a lot of times just depends on the caliber of show you're at.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense. So I'm curious, and I don't think that we talked about this, but if you had to guess on a calendar year, let's say just the year of 2023, how many shows did you vend?
It's gonna sound silly, but probably only like 20. I've
only
had
half the weeks in the year.
Only ish. I've had, I think the most shows I ever did one year was like 38.
Damn.
Wow.
And that was when I was living in New York, and I would drive to Cleveland and then drive to North Carolina, drive to Cleveland, drive to Tennessee, and I did that almost every weekend. So that was just the gentleman I was working with. It was he was the guy that I bought from early in the day at the Cleveland shows, and when I was in North Carolina, I ran into him and I found out his son lived there, and I gave him a job at the factory I worked in as a maintenance guy. So kind of somebody I always kept in contact with. And when I got back to Buffalo, I missed my Southeast shows and I really hated the Northeast shows. I felt like I was getting less money for my animals in the Northeast at the shows. And I also, the pricing was a little more cutthroat. And if they didn't know you, they didn't buy from you. I did like 3 hamburgs out of 4 one year. And I think I only sold 1 snake over 3 hamburgs. And that was on 2 tables. and I think I had 3 or 4 different species on my table, and everything looked good. But I wasn't a familiar face. People in the Northeast, I felt, just were a little more picky about who they bought from. It made more sense to do a 24-hour weekend than drive 4 or 5 hours from my house in Buffalo. So
Jeez.
a lot. But I don't know. I like shows. I like the food. I like the people. I feel like sometimes my sales pitch is a little better at a show. You really have more control over the sale at a show than you do online.
Oh, without
Um,
a doubt.
yeah, so I always enjoyed that, but I'll be honest, I'd like to cut it down to the good shows, the big ones, not travel as much as I have been. I think there's a lot of animals that I missed out on making because I wasn't here enough to work with them.
Yeah, being
So
gone 20 weekends a year, I wouldn't doubt it.
How do
there's a
you go ahead, because I
no,
have a follow-up question. I was going to ask, like, how a thing that I take pride of with my retics and breeding them is I'm in my garage every day. I
Yeah.
look at them every day, and I see the changes in their body. I see the changes in their food response. I know when I'm, I run ambient only, so I know when my temperatures are changing. I'm home. I know when the storms are coming in, and so I can't imagine like how is it that you're able to, I guess I kind of want to get into your mind on what it takes to do the pairings and to still be able to produce animals when you're gone for you're gone for 20 to 30 weekends.
um well, like you said, there's probably some things I'd be better at if I was here more. But with some of the species I work with, I just kind of time it out. Um, Boa constrictors, a lot of times it's introducing them and kind of letting them court for a month or two. Food intermittently, taking them out now and again, but sometimes that's just kind of leaving them be, checking on them periodically when I'm home. When it comes to ball python breeding rotations, I can rotate for 3 days a week, feed one day, and give them a 3-day break when I'm out of town. So rotations with that, where I'm still getting my males go as far as I want them to go, I can balance it out that way. Um, Northern blue tongue skinks typically wake up around March. They're in the same room as my colubrids, and that's very hands-on breeding. So in a perfect scenario where I'm not fucking around on my phone, I'm breeding blue tongue skinks while rotating corn snakes, watching for a corn snake lock while waiting for a blue tongue skink lock. So bringing those species up at the same time, and that's more of a spring thing. So come October again, or August, in all honesty, I just paired a lot of my boas in the last couple of days. Um, I cheat with the ultrasound a little bit.
Okay, fair.
I know where not to waste my time,
Fair.
but I also do tell people all the time, do not be married to the ultrasound. There's some species where you can ultrasound and be very successful, and there's some where I feel you become so dependent on it that you don't let the animals do their natural cycling. So like, Bill Brandt back in the day when he was getting into blue tongue skinks, I was talking to him all the time, and he had told me a season he was ultrasounding everything. We were talking about follicle development. He said he marked like 28 ovulations, and he got 3 litters of skinks. He didn't get 28 ovulations. We misread what we were seeing. Add out Rebecca. But so like with the boa constrictors, I like a baseline. The other day I ultrasounded everybody. I got some with little peas, 6 millimeters. I'm not even going to worry about them. I've got some at 10. A lot of them will sit at 10 for a long time. Then I've got some that are 13 to 18. Sometimes by 18 it's too late. And there's been a couple females that probably I should have bred in July that this year I paid a little more attention to, but that's just me learning the cycles of certain animals.
Right.
I recently was diagnosed with Asperger's by a guy that got drunk with me in California. I may be
Seems
on the
reliable.
spectrum. There may be something about me why I can literally remember where an animal is when I've got 4,000 animals in a building. There's really dumb things I remember, but there's a lot of things I really have a photographic memory for. But it's like the most useful and useless shit ever, and that is the truth.
I want to share just, I always like to bring this up, but yeah, Nathan tested positive on the autism spectrum disorder questionnaire that he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? I think all
An
of us
online mild diagnosis. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, all of us that are in this reptile community are into something that's different. And I think neurodivergent diagnoses like ADHD and autism and those kind of things, I think a lot of, I mean, I've been diagnosed with ADHD since I was 6, but I will say a lot of what you're saying sounds a lot like I got so much useful bullshit in my brain.
Yeah.
That like, there's things that I'm like Rain Man, but then, you know, you ask me to do something and I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yep. It's a weird thing. I like it. I don't mind it. And I don't know, man. I mean, I've always known I've been a little dumb or a little odd or whatever you want to put it. And, you know, I could be really dumb in some things and really smart in others. But, you know, my brain just picks and chooses like most other ones. And there's some information I could forget 5 minutes later if I don't care.
Yep.
Never get it back. But, you know, like I said, could be Asperger's, could be that other word I don't know very well. I'm like spectrum. I guess we'll call it spectrum. But again, I don't even know what that means. But no, like I said, it's a shitty balancing act. And in all honesty, there's a lot of ovulations I've missed. There's been boa pairings that I waited too late in the season because I was just so overwhelmed with traveling. I did an ultrasound. You know, like I said, I would have probably made more animals over the last decade if I wasn't traveling so much for shows. I am trying to figure out what that balance is, but just means working more in between, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even with me being here all the time, and there's certain animals that throw different, you know, working with different localities, I'm still learning some of the localities and how they differ in their cycling process and some of the other ones. And it's a learning curve for sure. So I can imagine being gone for a large part of the year can be one of those things. It's funny that you mentioned the ultrasound, and I did a little side comment that I feel like I need to just like make. I've had probably like this year alone, I've probably had like 24 people ask me if I use an ultrasound for my retics, and I'm like, have you ever held a retic? like
Yeah.
ultrasounding a retic is not going to be ideal, man.
You might have a couple females that'll let you get away with it, but yeah, far and few between.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, I do a lot of the boa racks. I've always liked the big tubs. They're easier to clean. I like getting inside them. I hate having to like climb in the caging. I open the rack. I put a little lube on there. I follow up the tail pattern to where it switches the back pattern. I count up by 3 and I put the thing on it and I do one of these and I see follicles. And it's instant. So I definitely will say with the retics, I'm sure there's that little sweet spot, that zone, and where, you know, it's not taking the animal out, it's not submerging in water to ultrasound it, just a little jelly. I set it right where I think it's supposed to be, and I give it a look, and a lot of times they're right there waiting for you. And if it's really tough for you to find them, they're probably just so small you're wasting your time anyways.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Or it's a male. We've all done that. Could be a male.
Good point. Oh man. So we've talked about kind of the setup process. Let me ask you, this is really basic, but is it just a matter about going to these show websites and emailing to get on the list, or to reach out and you know, maybe it's different for Dave Levinson today, but what do you like? What does someone new have to do in order to even like get in contact?
Well, bottom up. You know, Show Me is a smaller show. Repticon is a smaller show. Still has online registry. Reptilian Nation, I do believe they have forms you could send him for that. Or if you know Ryan personally, he sends out a text to people. You know, you have the Herp show with Sean. There are waiting lists forever to get in the Sean show. I know this because I have almost never done a Sean show. I want to do Sean shows, but I decide I want to do a show sometimes a couple months beforehand. It's really hard to put myself on a list for a year or two. And I understand why he does it. I respect him for it, but I'm a selfish asshole and I just wish he just let me in. Like, you know, that's really all there is to it. But, you know, most of these shows, you know, NARBC, the Super Show, Daytona. I mean, Daytona, you don't fuck around, man. Like, my buddy had his tables moved this past Daytona. His payment didn't get there on time. A lot of things happened in that envelope on the way, and they were all true stories. For the first time ever, it was a true story on why that check didn't get there. But because of that, the spot he had been in for years was no longer his spot, and they put him somewhere else.
And you know how people are in the classroom. Like, you got your seat, and you don't, like, if you walk into your class late and someone's in your seat, like, you want to kill them.
Yeah. So, some of these shows, like, be professional, get it in early. And, with me, sometimes I'm a little more willy-nilly with my schedule, because sometimes I don't even want to do shows. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to do 4 shows. Like, it's just like overnight sometimes. But, just be responsible. Most businesses are probably going to do 4 to 8 shows a year, tops. And maybe a few of those you don't even vend. Maybe you're just attending the big shows to hang out with people. So, telling Sean 2 years in advance, knowing you're going to want to do his shows in Texas. Conroe is the good example in Texas. Conroe's got a long waiting list. It's probably arguably the biggest show in Texas.
They need a bigger venue, man.
But here's the thing.
Is it still at the skating rink?
I don't think it was a skating rink when I was there, but also I haven't had tables there in 8 years.
So it was I went 2 years ago. It's at a skating rink. It's a small area, and it is jam packed. And I'm talking about, like, you're squeezing through people. It's a phenomenal show. It's a great show. Amazing reptiles, but man, I hope they get a bigger venue.
So, pros and cons. Same amount of money comes to the show, or same amount of money is going to come to the show every time. Add a vendor, it's getting split up a little more. Add 10 vendors, it gets split up a even more from there. Some shows have a sweet spot where all the vendors are always happy, everybody's always doing well, and you know what that tipping point is pretty quick sometimes. So
fair.
Sometimes too, like, and it's kind of a silly thing, but like, if I go to a show and it sucks and everybody's frustrated, nobody's happy, but it's like, man, it should have been good. If I find out there's 10 or 15 less vendors next time, I might give it another go. Sometimes when I knew it's a new show in a new area where I know they've been promoting, because typically when someone does a new show, they're going to over promote. I like to be at the first show because sometimes the second show is a big step down in quality. Everybody comes in, blows their load at the first one and doesn't care to come back to the next one.
We were talking about that San Antonio show that was here. What is it? Reptilian Nation?
Yes.
Dude, there was billboards everywhere. Everywhere on the highway. I was so freaking impressed. There wasn't a spot in San Antonio you can drive in that you didn't see it. And I ended up going on a Sunday, went there when the doors were open, and it was pretty packed. I was impressed.
Yeah.
The first year they were here in Utah, same thing, like billboards all over the place. I teach at a hair school. Most of my cosmetology students, just because they knew that I bred snakes, they're like, are you going to the reptile show? And I was like, well, I wasn't totally planning on it, but I guess I have to now.
No,
yeah, I had people from work that were like, hey, I went Saturday, I didn't see you. And I was like, I went Sunday, that's why.
No, I made fun of RepCon back in the day when they started putting those little signs on the corners, like, get with the times. Those little signs are very
like
effective.
posted to chain link fence, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those little yellow ones that are on that, like,
even just like posted in the ground.
Yeah, little political signs, but with your show on the front of it.
Sure.
Come see reptiles.
Yeah, it's so I'm a brutally honest guy sometimes, but the problem is that sometimes it's just an opinion. I don't really like bad advice, because what are you really doing for somebody?
Right.
Sometimes you got to pull the Band-Aid off. I was having a conversation with a promoter, and he was showing me his Facebook exposures for the show and how much traffic it was driving, and like, he was showing me all this. And I was like, yeah, but I was at that show and nobody showed up. What does it matter if 5,000 or 10,000 people saw that ad? Nobody's there, kind of thing. Just because in your head you think, your Facebook exposures or whatever you're doing to market your show is working, if it doesn't reflect on your door, it's not working. Whoever's telling you to do that is telling you wrong. And as simple as thing is for Ryan to send a team out in every town weeks beforehand to put up signs everywhere, it's such an old-fashioned way of doing things. But Ryan arguably is getting more people through the door than most other shows in the country. even some of the bigger boy shows. And it's just grassroots on the ground, putting up signs, and people are seeing them and going out to the show. When I get to San Antonio, I open up Facebook, and the first thing is a Facebook ad for Reptilian Nation. So it's good that he's still targeting that also, but I genuinely think it's the signs that he puts up that gets the people out.
No, absolutely. I had dozens of people, like everyone who knows me here in San Antonio knows I'm the snake guy. And just people who had zero interest. They're like, they were asking me, are you going to the reptile show this weekend? And sometimes I unplug from social media and everything, but I'll see them and everything. And I mean, there's a couple people that were asking me a month before, and I was like, what show? And it's impressive the way that they've been able to market that. He's done a good job, but I got a question for you. And we talked about location, right? Like location of where you are going to be, where your booth is set up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a preferred spot? Do you know what works and doesn't work? Like what is the sweet spot? I'm curious about that, because I've always wondered, do you want to be the first person? Do you want to be in the middle? Do you want to be in the back right?
I like the middle.
I do see you in the middle all the time.
Yeah, I request the middle as often as I can get it. My worst shows are when I'm the first table you see when you walk through the door.
Fair.
I gotta hope to God after you see the other 200 tables, you remember me. Hopefully there's something rememberable, but there's a lot of tempting things through a reptile show, and a lot of people don't want to spend their money on the first table they see.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know it's at the show that they're going to spend their money on. So a lot of times I find the middle, they've already seen some animals. They've already kind of seen some prices. They got to lay the land a little bit. Now, at this point, I feel people are a little more geared up to buy once they get to the middle or towards the back. I did a show, the Super Show, years ago. Romney was nice enough to give me a last-minute table or a last-minute end cap. When I got there, I was at the very back of the building next to a pile of wood and a hot dog stand. I was alone floating island, and I set up my tables, and I looked down the aisle, and I couldn't even see the front door of the building. I thought I was going to fail miserably. But that show gets so many people through the door, even though I was the last one in the back, I ended up having a really good weekend.
It's because you're by the hot dog table.
I was going to say, how much do we attribute this to the hot dog stand?
It's hard to say, and crazy enough, I didn't have a single hot dog the entire weekend. I was talking, I was too busy. No time for that. Sounded gay. We're not going to talk about hot dogs anymore. So I do think the middle is a good spot, just based on, I think people got to get a little bit out of their system. They got to see a couple things. They got to figure out what they're maybe doing. And then it's just up to you being good at what you do. Again, keeping them around a little bit.
Yeah. I do think that personality, personability, sales, but I'm curious as well, like you need those traits and qualities to be able to land sales, especially when you have hundreds of people walking through doors, thousands of people walking through doors, and there's 100 other tables that are out there. So there needs to be something that separates you. We've talked about the displays and everything, but I'm curious, a way that I've also looked at shows, and I just want to know your opinion on this. Regardless of whether you are making a profit or not, I've always thought in the back of my mind that having a decent display and having your logo out there and just having your brand out there is a really good thing for you, whether you are making a profit or not. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Of even if you're going there and you're not landing a sale, that you're still going away with people taking your business card or maybe learning about something. I think that there's something about marketability, about just getting yourself out there instead of it just being all online.
Yes, a little bit. Maybe the same amount I feel like I get out of doing a podcast. We do these. We think it's going to market our name a little bit, but sometimes it just doesn't mean shit.
Right.
I do think getting your name out there, but what are we talking right now? Your local show at the VFW? Or are we talking about the Super Show? Are we talking, it's some people will go to an NARBC and not sell something the first time. They're getting their brand out there, and that is a show off your brand show. I like to stand like in the middle and see how far I can see, but really there's banners fucking everywhere. You can't see past an aisle over top. Some are sticking up to the ceiling. That's definitely a show where you are marketing because that's a high dollar show and you assume there's gonna be a high dollar buyer. But if you go to your local VFW, hand out 20 business cards, don't make a single sale, I mean, you might never even get a phone call. It doesn't matter what you had going on that weekend. So, gauge it based on your clientele and what it is. Yes, always have a professional product on your table. But again, gauge your show. I have some shows I put notes down afterwards that say never bring a display case back. Sometimes displays, like I said, scare people off. I used to have shows where I wouldn't put prices on my displays because I knew everybody wanted to negotiate anyways. So starting out blank just made it a negotiation. Different regions, people are wired different ways, but we all read people differently. That's just what works for me.
How'd that go, by the way? Not putting a price.
It went great, and that's why I kept doing it for that series of shows. It was just, it didn't scare people off when they saw a number. It made them curious. It forced them to ask how much it was. But then you go to some regions, you don't have prices on. They don't even want to talk to you. They question if the animal's even for sale because you don't have a price on the display case.
Sure.
So I don't know how to sample that for you. That was just something that worked for me in a couple regional shows in the Southeast.
I think it's pretty fucking genius, if you ask me.
If you pay attention, I mean, if I'm looking into a show I'm going to do, is there a concert in the parking lot next door? When I do the Raleigh show in North Carolina, is there a college football game on Saturday? Is there going to be anywhere to park? Am I going to make money on Sunday, not Saturday? Like, sometimes, like when it comes to the nitty gritty of where am I going to go this weekend, sometimes I'll see what's going on around it. I got stuck sleeping in my truck for 2 days in Nashville because there was 4 concerts going on. Wasn't a hotel in the entire town, and I always wait till the last minute to book a hotel. So yeah, and that's fine. I don't mind. I think when people see me showering in the bathroom in the morning, it really helps my brand.
I was gonna say it's just it's solidifying the brand.
Yeah, real icebreaker. I'm selling success every time I shower in a bathroom.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the beard sells it all.
Hey, it's a whole vibe, man. The best thing about the beard, I'm not really much of a fighter, but between these eyes and this beard, I go to some fucked up places and people cross the road when they see me coming. So I'm going to stick this out a little longer. Gets a lot more respect than the handlebar mustache got.
Yeah, I loved my beard. I grew mine out for over a year, but I cut it off once I had probably like 8 people a day asking me if I was Amish.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, probably not for me.
Were you living in Salt Lake City?
No, I was living in Florida and in Sarasota, where there's a big Amish community.
Interesting. I got family down that way.
Yeah.
Well, what else do you want to know about the shows?
Let's see. So,
you always break away.
Have you had any? I mean, I feel like some people might get a bad attitude about going into shows and looking at other vendors as competition. Have you ever had any issues with competition, or how do you view other vendors in a similar lane as you?
Friends?
Well, we all love a little competition. But I will say, where I say with my sales, there's white lies. That might not have been the best way of putting it. Honesty goes a long way. But it's got to be real honesty. If someone's at my table, one thing that is something that I've done for years is if I don't have the right animal for you, and I know I don't have the right animal for you, I'm probably going to tell you who has the right animal for you. I'm going to send you over there to somebody I want to buy from also, knowing you're going to have a good experience with that guy. And that's just, I don't send people to everybody. And I very rarely tell people not to go to people. I think they can figure that out on their own. It's all part of being in the hobby. But I like to be pretty honest. Like I said, a lot of the smaller shows are mid-sized shows. I like to get the lap beforehand. I like to see what's out there. And when a family comes over and they're talking about a baby rosy boa, I tell them to go over there. Somebody's asking about a retic, I might tell them to go over there. I'm pretty honest with people. I don't try to force the sale, and I think people appreciate that.
Mhm.
It's throwing in the towel, but at the same time, the next show when they're ready for what I have, a lot of times they're going to give me a shot before anybody else, especially if their experience is good with who I sent them to. So I don't really see competition at the shows. Um, I have confidence in my product on the table, and I have confidence mine's probably leveled up to what yours is. And I'm also confident I'm probably going to be able to out-talk you. So
that's
I
the mindset that you need to have if you have that shitty attitude going into vending a reptile show.
find a way to be humble but competitive is the way I guess I'd put it. You want to get every sale. You're there to make money.
Yeah.
But again, be honest, don't force sales, and read the room. When it's gone, man. Let it walk away. Sometimes guys talk to me and they just want to make me their bitch. And unlike other people, I'll let you make me your bitch. I'll make you
100,
think.
dude.
Yeah.
100%. That's sales 101. You want to take whatever you want out on me? Sure.
Fine. You think I'm unhappy that you're giving me money right now for less than you think I was willing to take, but I'm actually
Right.
pretty happy. So yeah, like I said, read the room, read people. Hey, sometimes you'll talk to people at shows and you can tell they don't want to talk. And you never know what the conversation's gonna be either, because selling a mainland common wild type retic for $150, $200, $250, whatever that market is a very different conversation than a $2,500 dwarf retic.
Mhm.
You may be having an investment conversation with the one guy, where the other guy you're talking about basic care and body language of your animal so you don't get tagged. So
Or caging.
gauging, yeah.
Yeah.
Be a social comedian or a social chameleon about the sale. Read the guy, read the person, read the family. Makes it easy. You kind of figure out what they want out of you. Like even with podcasting, man, like, I hope he's not listening, but I was doing one with Elijah with Juggernaut, and I love that guy. But I noticed in the beginning of the podcast, just looked like he was going to cut somebody. He just kind of looked a little like he was not really enjoying it. But
Right.
man, when I started talking about mutations, morph this, morph that, crossing things together, completely changed the conversation. Everything got all happy. Please, nobody told him I said this. But it was kind of reading the room. And here's the thing: I talk to him all the time now. Me, him, and Matt Minatola are in a little group together. We chat every once in a while. And
That's
if
a
I
good
want to
dude.
talk short tails and bloods, I mean, who else is there? I mean, there's a lot of people, yes, but love having those two guys there.
We're actually about to have Matt on in a bit. I need to reach back out to him, but he agreed to come on. He's going to be our short tail species spotlight expert.
Really cool, man. No, Matt's a very knowledgeable guy. He was somebody I was very lucky to meet when in the Northeast. He was somebody at the Hamburg shows I started seeing, and we did a little business together. Kind of stayed in touch over the years. Always liked that guy.
How do you like the short tails?
I've got a real soft spot for the species, but it's my everything always goes wrong. But not like
Your kryptonite species.
yeah, I didn't want to call them kryptonite because I want another shot, but they might be. It's just I bought some of the super stripe stuff from him back in the day, some of the ocelot stuff, and I had a couple other miscellaneous animals, a couple Sumatrans, and I had them in the animal plastic racks that have the two 12-inch sheet up the sides. And the girl I was seeing at the time was doing crested geckos. She rolled the rack off the wall and rolled it back, and probe came out, cooked everything in the rack. I was just kind of done at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
I own one blood, and it's a GoldenEye Batik Het T positive.
Dude, those
It's a
golden eyes
male.
are phenomenal.
Love it. Beautiful animal. Never got a female for him. I have to get a female for him, but like I said, I just feel like that one time in the hobby that here was me getting my bloods in Borneo short tails, and they died.
Right.
And I've never really ever been very financially stable, even back then. I was kind of just doing random jobs to make this work. So when something like that went wrong, I mean, that was catastrophic.
Punch. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. So I never honestly really recovered from that, and that was 14 years ago. So,
It
maybe someday.
stung.
Yeah. I wish, and I probably will at some point, but just not right now.
I got one more question in regards to vending, and then I kind of want to
I have
caveat.
one last one as well.
Yeah, and then after that, if it's okay with you, you've mentioned Ben quite a bit, and we actually just did an episode kind of covering his legacy and the story and everything that happened, and I know that you had a really, really vital role in supporting that collection when he passed away. And so, but before I want to talk a little bit about that, one of the questions I had was. We talk a lot on here, and we actually really advise, especially as a Retic podcast, we are very outspoken about impulse buying, and that not just being a good, like, sure, go impulse buy a ball python, and sure, I mean, even with a boa, right? Because at the end of the day, most boas stay a very manageable size. But when it comes to impulse buying a Retic, right, especially if you're doing it at a show where anybody could just put a Super Dwarf or Dwarf label on it. Not a good thing to do with a very large species of snake, but I kind of wanted to just touch base with you on if there are any ethical things in the forefront of your mind, or any ethics that play a role in your sales when it comes to putting animals in the right people's hands. And is there anything that you're looking for, or any red flags, I guess, from customers?
Well, first off, being ethical is just common sense, and a lot of times we choose to do the things we choose that are bad.
Right.
If you choose to sell an animal that somebody won't be successful, you did it anyways. So, there's always gonna be certain people that run their business how they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. I try to be a little honest at what people are gonna need getting into it, and I let them make the decision. But at the same time, I do try to find ways to say, well, instead of buying the $5 water dish, go to the Dollar Tree. Instead of buying the $20 vine, go to the Dollar Tree. I try to find ways where they can still get the proper setup, but not end up so deep in it that they can't afford the animal they want.
Right.
Encouraging people to have a setup before even coming to the show is one of the best things you can do. And I know people like with Emily with Snake Discovery and some of the other people that are more in the pet market, I would like to believe in a lot of their content, they are encouraging people to be prepared before bringing an animal home, especially in this whole bioactive world we live in now.
Right.
So, like I said, common sense is the way of putting it, but you are who you are. Like I said, it's very easy to know what's right and wrong when you're talking to somebody.
Right. Nathan, before you go into your question, I gotta ask Dave. You made the comment on this bioactive world that we're going in. Can you elaborate what your thoughts are on all that? I know that there's a lot of there are a lot of people that are very pro it, and a lot of people that are very we talked about in the last episode that we did, but this idea that people are now starting to hate breeders.
Well, they've always hated breeders, and that could be dog, cat, rabbit. A lot of people hate how the bacon's made, but they eat bacon.
Right.
Here's the thing. Have you guys made bioactives yet?
I have a
I
bioactive.
haven't. I keep everything very clinical on paper. It's something. It's a little like OCD, right? Like I have the most control of, making sure my animal stays healthy on paper.
And I appreciate that about Nathan too. Like, Nathan is very spot on with that kind of stuff. I have some of the ARS, like large 5-foot boa racks. And I've turned 3 of those into bioactives. And they're really cool, right? But I will say that now that I'm in them about a year, it's a pain in the ass. It's not a set and forget type of thing.
No, you don't have a green thumb, you're probably going to suck at it. I enjoyed the process. I'm actually building my first 2 right now.
It's cool. It is a cool process to enjoy. It feels fulfilling as hell.
Oh, it's I don't know, man. I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things in the hobby that, you're a true hobbyist if you enjoy herping. You're a true hobbyist if you want to sit down and make a bioactive. I'm not going to have a bunch of species that I need bioactives for, but after I build a couple of them, I might build a couple more just to have them around. But like you said, it's a lot of work. plants die, things go wrong. It's like having a saltwater aquarium in a way.
Right.
But like I said, I think there's a part of the industry for everybody, and I think there's the bioactive scene, and I think there's a lot of people that are creating products within that are making a lot of money. I believe you have an empire like Josh's Frogs because of a bioactive community. So I think when it comes to bioactive things, it depends how you want to look at it, but I think it's surging. I think it's going to continue to surge.
Absolutely.
I came up with a new one that I'm going to start building hopefully in a year or two. I got to draw it up. I say a year or two because I never have time for anything, but I came up with a pretty nifty idea that I think you guys will appreciate when I'm done and might make you want to do a bioactive yourself.
I'm gonna build one for my Amazon tree boa.
I'm building 2 for Amazon tree boas right now.
Yeah, I mean that to me, for like any of the species I have in my collection, that seems like the no-brainer to really like try to go full out with live plants and all that.
Yeah, and the same thing here, like with the retics, like it doesn't make all that much sense to me, but when I get my tree monitors, all right, maybe dabble a little bit, and it makes a little bit more sense.
I bring up eyelash vipers a lot. I've never really wanted to work with venomous. Man, it is a very pretty animal.
Yep.
I've always liked
Bioactive's a way to go with them.
Yeah, bioactive would be great. Set them up, maybe throw some geckos in there, let them just reproduce themselves. There's a food source, hopefully, that can keep up. Something a little simpler. I would want to keep venomous, but I don't know. If venomous, I feel like it's one of those things that you really have to be all in. I don't think you just dabble in venomous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I will say, like with the smaller viper species, tree vipers, those kind of things, if there's going to be a way to keep them that's going to minimize your interaction with them to increase safety, bioactive would be a great way to go.
Yeah, so that might be one I have, but like you said, Amazon tree bows first. I got the Boiga, so I'll probably do some Boiga ones next. Probably still have to do some spot cleaning, but I kind of want to get them just set up like that, at least partially bioactive. And I even like, it's funny you bring that up. Like, I I'd had half of mine to build like a 4-foot enclosure to put like 3 children's pythons in and make it semi bioactive. Sand boas, I thought maybe the same thing, like maybe set up a bioactive for them where I keep them in groups year round.
How does that even work? How would you do a bioactive for a sand boa?
Oh, it'd just be dry. It'd just be dry as fuck. It's just sand. Probably the easiest bioactive you can make, honestly.
Right.
But no, I just thought, all the Florida guys are lucky where they get to keep their animals outside and breed them.
Dude,
like,
right? Or
yeah.
California, Southern California, man.
So I look at that and like, I kind of like, the blue tongue skink thing and Ron St. Pierre and Heather. Or I should say Heather and Ron St. Pierre.
Right.
Really cool they can keep them outside. Really cool that they're in little communal groups and they're not hurting each other. And it's really cool that they're being very successful. On some species that maybe there's like a wide window on when you get to catch the female. If you could set something up where you can maybe have these animals in a space that maybe takes up the same amount of space if you have them in 3 different cages, if it's going to up your success rate every year breeding them to catch them in their proper window when they know when to do it, I think there's a lot of species we probably benefit from keeping in bioactives or at least larger enclosures and colonies. But
Diamond pythons is one of those that has been. Brandon Wheeler's keeping his outside in California. He got his to have a successful clutch with that, and they were an old pair too.
Okay, is that a troublesome species?
Diamond pythons, the issue with them is they need to be cooled down quite a bit. So keeping them outside, he was able to get success with them because it gets in the 50s where he's at.
Okay, understandable.
Yeah.
But, if you did corn snakes in a large enclosure with multiples, the one male will probably just breed the one female 40 times and not touch the other girls. So, some species that might not work with.
Right. Right. That makes sense.
So my last question in terms of just like the reptile show aspect is just since you've been doing this so long, what have you noticed are like the big significant changes in how reptile shows are run, put together, that whole deal?
Well, I think a lot of the shows are similar in their old ways that they are now. I don't think I can tell you anything different about a Tinley Park today that I could 10 years ago.
Okay.
Same thing. I mean, the California show, the Super Show. I mean, I've been going there off and on for 10 years. Same building, same layout, probably the same marketing, same crowd. And a lot of the smaller shows, they mimic what other people are doing in a sense. I do think that it's very smart that, like Emily is invited out to like the NERBCs. I think
Yeah.
that brings a larger crowd. They might not all be meant for us, but, at least it gets eyes through the door.
For sure.
But, a good example of that where it didn't work out was there was the Arlington show where she got set up in the back and the line went right to the middle. And that's my table where the line was. So closest to where she was Ryan McVeigh with VivTech.
He killed it, didn't he?
Killed it. Next table was a hognose breeder. And then there was me with boas, ball pythons, and a few miscellaneous woomas, so on and so forth. And the line came down the aisle. I'll do it this way. The line came down the aisle. Here's my table. They're like, oh, we're going to stand way over here. And they walk 6 feet. And then they're like, hognose. Hognose guys sold the fuck ton of hognose. VivTech sold out of light bulbs. You want to know why? Emily promotes hognose, and everybody does bioactives, and those bulbs are perfect.
Yep.
That line was their clientele and perfect for them. I made $0 on Saturday.
Man.
So, like I said, it's cool when we get them out. It's definitely a big draw. It was the same way with Brian Barczyk. He was invited out to the first Myrtle Beach show, which I mentioned earlier. And he had been invited out to plenty of other shows over the years where he was bringing his fan base. So I do think there's a benefit with the social media guys coming out to a lot of these shows. I think it helps a lot. But I also think it draws more pet buyers and less investors.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly. It's going to cater to the younger, newer pet people.
But
especially
in terms for our industry, I think that's overall good. I mean, those pet buyers turn into investors pretty easily.
Exactly. Look at me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that's one thing that I think, a lot of breeders can get away from in that aspect. And because a lot of us are producing investment like animals. And I do think that there needs to be people in the hobby that are really massively marketing to the pet industry, because we look at our industry as breeders and we look at like the investment type of animals that makes up the most minuscule percentage of reptile owners and keepers in the entire country.
Yep.
Most people are pet people. I would probably venture to say less than 10% are the people like us doing this.
So the reptile market, or just, reptile amphibians in general, is the largest, I think, worldwide market in the moment when it comes to animals, I believe. Right. If it's not at least that, it had been the fastest growing over the last decade. Now, I will say a lot of those numbers are swayed on turtle sales, those $5 Myrtle Beach turtles. But, this hobby is growing, and you're right. You don't really know who an investor is until he's an investor. We all come in just thinking it's cool to see all this stuff, and then, we get the bug. And, the last piece of advice I'll give, or the last reality about the hobby in my eyes, your first 5 years makes or breaks you. A lot of times if you start out with young animals, your breeding stock's not going to get there for 3 to 5 years. Now you have to produce. Now you have to care for them. Now you have to sell them. Doesn't work out for everybody. A lot of people,
the hardest part.
It really can be. But not for everybody. And that's not even like necessarily gloating about how great I am at this. It's more like it's really hard to find the total package in the industry. Sometimes some people are just these recluses that breed like it's nothing and are amazing or are seeing things that other people don't see. Pre-ovulation glows, body language of your animal, knowing if it's rolled on its side in a July, it might not be the month you're supposed to breed it, but it's probably got follicle development and wants you to put a male in there. Learning little things like that about your animals. But like I said, first 5 years are tough because a lot of times the first 5 years you're not getting anything out of it financially. And maybe you invested $20,000 or $30,000. Maybe you took money out of your 401k. That's not uncommon. We heard a lot of that during COVID. After the first 5 years, I think the 20-year mark's the big one. It seems like if you get by that first 5, it's autopilot now because you're making money, you're changing your collection around, things are different for you. And then sometimes just after doing anything for 20 years is a burnout. And I hate to say it, even things you love to do, sometimes you just don't love doing them anymore once you do them too much. So 5 years, then 20, in my opinion, is when people really look in the mirror when they're in the hobby.
Right. It's a good indicator for sure. All right. Let's jump in. I know that we talked about the backstage a little bit. We talked about your relationship with Ben and everything. We did put out that episode a couple of weeks ago. And Nathan and I took about 3 to 4 weeks prepping for that and wanting to get information from a lot of areas. And your name was a common theme. So rather than me trying to guide this, I kind of just wanted to ask you, when Ben was alive, when did you first meet him, and how did you get into the role that you were with helping him and all that?
Well, Ben, I'd actually bought an animal from Ben without even knowing it was Ben initially. It was when vanilla creams were a big deal in ball pythons, so everybody was buying all the vanillas and fires they could buy. And I don't know who he was set up with, but he was on like the far side of Tinley, one table, early days of Ben, and I got a vanilla from him. First time I actually met the guy, didn't know who I met. I think probably 2 years later, can't say how many for sure. A guy down in North Carolina, Justin McMillan. McBriar. I'm sorry, Justin McBriar. Asked me if I wanted to go out to dinner with Ben Retic and his wife. And I was all like, of course I do. Younger guy, the guy was a little bit younger than me. And that's why I knew Ben. I always kind of make the comment about Ben is, he was, when I met Ben for the first time, I thought he was going to be 50 or 60 years old. Just based on his website, his social media, his pictures, everything about his business. I didn't think I was going to meet a guy in his 20s. I think I said something really inappropriate around him as in a joke when we were out to dinner, and he laughed his ass off. And we just kind of gravitated towards each other. When we go to Tinley, everyone would go to big dinners. A lot of times him would just go, him and Lindley would just go, him and Chase Baker would just go. We always had like very small circles. Not that we don't like everybody, but I'm. You guys ever have an opportunity to talk to Ben?
No, I wish I did, because I knew that the breeding stock that made my founding animals came from Ben, but just in that year and a half, never reached out.
Yeah, I got into the Retic scene when the year that he passed away, and I had seen his interactions in the forums and everything, but just never had the opportunity to talk to him.
Well, again, definitely was somebody who was very professional. And you always got that when you saw him at the shows. And like I said, those white displays, white bedding, white banners, just always really conducted himself well at the shows. But he was very savvy with business. In my opinion, he probably could have went into anything and been successful. Luckily for us, he got into reptiles. Like I said, we always I found pictures of me and him in Daytona, and it's just me walking on the beach with him. At Tinley, there's a hallway that you can't exit out the bottom floor, so nobody ever used those stairwells. Me and him used to just go sit in the stairwell for 6 hours and talk after the show was over because nobody would walk by us. Sometimes we let a couple people know we're in there and they come meet us, but for whatever reason, we always hid from people at the shows and just kind of found our own little thing and talked. Like I said, he had a very good understanding about business, which I really loved. Even though sometimes I do talk a little shit about ball pythons, I'm an encyclopedia for ball python history. And to be honest with you, before working with Ben's collection, I had like 10 or 15 ball pythons. But to tell you the truth, just Ben was one of those guys I always just called on the road trip, so on and so forth. Now, as for me coming and helping, I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. So when I was going to take a little break, I was going down to Florida. I got a call from Lindley, and it was like the morning after. And the weird thing about it is, she changed her profile picture the day before into their wedding picture, and I think the girlfriend at the time, she picked up on something weird on that. I didn't really think anything of it, but she picked up on something weird. It just felt weird to her. So when I got the phone call, I found it even weirder when she was calling us next day after we talked about this. She came right out and told me something happened to Ben, and the way she put it was, my name was on a sheet of paper that he said if anything ever happened to him, call Dave. Now here's the reality: there might not be a sheet of paper, guys. I might have just been a factor or a pawn in a big fucking thing that ended up being something that most people didn't understand when it was said and done. But the way I take out of this is, I don't think anybody else would have done it. This was moving from North Carolina to here, almost as I had just moved back to North Carolina. I'm not complaining by any means. I really sucks why I got here, but I love the state. It's quiet. Most of the people here are pretty nice, so I like living here. But I'll never really know for sure. I will say that I had a understanding of the way he ran his business, and I guess one way I put it, because I don't usually talk about this shit that much, and this might be taken the wrong way, but me and Ben were very similar in a lot of ways when it came to the way we treated people. I always joke around that even if I don't like you, you probably won't realize it the way I talk to you. So in a sense, filling Ben's shoes after he passed might not have been so hard for people because me and him were so nice to people. I even used to joke around after Ben died, like, what would Ben do when I'm going back and forth with the customer? Maybe I'm like pulling my hair out. When I kind of started working with that, I tried to keep it in consideration the way he did it beforehand, and I tried to keep it the same as much as possible. I did make changes, and I've held on to a lot of the animals that are probably worthless in the hobby at this point, but just a weird thing, to be honest with you guys.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Other people were called to let know what happened. It was kind of kept in a small circle. It was very confusing at first. So, like, I didn't really, I think I got there. Let's say he died on a Monday. I got a call on a Tuesday. I got there on Wednesday. First couple days, we're just kind of spending time with his kids and spending time with Lindley and her father. And then after a few days of me just kind of being there, we went to the reptile building for the first time. And the next day, I started waking up in the morning and just driving 45 minutes to just work on the animals all day. It sucked. It was good. It sucked. It was good. Rearranged the rack systems a lot when I got there to try to change it enough so I didn't really have to map out a crime scene, I guess you could say, in my head. There was evidence that I found, which unfortunately I had to testify because of it. And it's not like my evidence was changing anything, but
Right.
it was weird, man. Like I said, I'm a people person, but I will say that the whole thing probably did turn me into a little bit of a recluse.
Absolutely, man.
I kind of didn't really want to talk to anybody at first because you really didn't even know who to talk to. Like I said, everything was kind of weird, but like I said, it's probably, in my opinion, one of the most unfortunate things that has ever happened in the hobby.
Absolutely.
We lose people. We lose people all the time. We lose guys that were lifers in the hobby that, some of the OGs are getting old, guys. We're going to lose some people, but I don't think there's going to be anything quite like what it was with Ben in the hobby. And, the neat thing about it, too, is his crossover in communities.
Right.
So,
Which is
when it
huge.
happened,
You don't see a lot of that.
very big. But no, like I said, it's not really anything I don't mind talking about. It's just one of those things that I'm not looking for a pat on the back. So when I say these things, sometimes it sounds like in my head what somebody would say, looking for that. But really, honestly, it was just a really unique experience compared to anything else you could ever deal in life.
Yeah.
But I will say this: that experience followed by Forrest dying sucked. Forrest was a good friend of mine. me and Forrest went back 10, 15 years, even longer, if not around the same amount of time I knew Ben. So, the same thing. I kind of dropped what I was doing. I went to go see Des and Lars for a few days, helped where I could. It could go back to the Asperger's, but a lot of times I don't get sad. I kind of get into these situations where things are going wrong, and I try to take the burden off of everybody else around me. Even then again, it carries on with sadness, but, even dealing with Ben's thing and Forrest thing, even though I wasn't there directly for the Forrest thing, then when my father got sick, I spent 7 months with him before he passed away. And that was 7 months of knowing he was going to pass away. I think those 7 months went smoother because of what I had already dealt with a few years beforehand, to where I guess I handle my shit when things go wrong. I get sad. We all get sad. I had plenty of times. I mean, the car ride from the airport to Ben's place after it happened was get it all out of you before you see anybody kind of thing.
Sure.
And you have your moments when you're alone. We're all treat this differently, but when things are going really bad or things are sad, I try not to be the sad person. It's just easier for me not to be the sad person. But no, the Ben thing really changed my entire experience in the hobby. Not in a way where it's ruined the hobby for me. If anything, I've kind of said it recently, but it was kind of me filling his shoes after he passed away in a sense. And again, because we were so similar, it wasn't a shock to the system for people around us. But no, like I said, I went from having 15 to 20 ball pythons, 27 blue tongue skinks, 20 boa constrictors, and some corn snakes to 30 retics and 3,000 ball pythons. But it was learned fast. You kind of, you already understand the hobby. And, I had done a lot of factory work before that. So like I had set up a lot of operations for like assembly lines. So my brain works that way. So, 2,000 snakes is an assembly line of snake hair. So you kind of figure out what the right way of doing it is. You don't have to do it exactly like the other guy did it, but you kind of have to do it similar. But I will say the downside is every time I ever produced a ball python that I know the ID, and I think a lot of other people in the hobby would say the same thing. You called up Ben and sent him the picture, and he'd ID it for you. So, that was definitely something that after he was gone, people started calling me asking those questions, always thinking I knew. And there was stuff I knew, but it was a lot of learning curve and kind of taking on that responsibility. But, like I said, it's I hate why I'm here. I love being here. Ben thing's just gonna be the weirdest thing, in my opinion, I have to deal with in the hobby, more than likely. I hope. I really hope.
No, I hope so as well. And again, I know that you're not looking for a pat on the back or anything, but just you speaking on that account, I don't know. It goes to show just the character that you have. Like you said, I don't know who else would have dropped their life to go and do that. That's a big undertaking, and just a massive change of pace in terms of the animals you have to care for.
No, it was different. And, also, full transparency. And I know some people in the hobby know, but, Ben was slowly starting to work on downsizing life.
Yeah.
There was already talks about him selling his collection, but not at all. So, that was something that I was kind of there for those talks when he was having those conversations. And there was definitely the conversation had that if the new investor was going to invest in Ben, he wanted me to try to help out. But that was still going to be like this, like handoff and like working with Ben and kind of like doing it slowly over time. It all happened abruptly. Again, maybe that's why I was the phone call. But like I said, it was a weird situation. Made the best of it. There's a few things I wish I would have done a little differently once I got here, and I always say it. I wish I had more of a relationship with his kids. Lots happened since I got here. It's just something that I just don't have. It sucks. But that's probably the worst thing about it is, I always had this grandioso thing in my head about, just kind of being, helping with the kids whenever I could. I've always been a kid person. I always babysat for my friends in Buffalo. I let kids torture me, so I'm a good babysitter. So, like I said, I thought that would be like the one, and I don't want to use positive words like upside, but like I think in the back of my head, I think that comforting factor was always thinking that maybe just knowing them would be like something I could do to help, just making people laugh when they need to laugh. But like I said, it didn't really work out that way, and things can change over time, but
Sure.
it was a very complicated situation, and
Sure.
not that I consider myself a burden in it, but who the fuck was I in all that? You know what I mean? Especially when it came to the inner workings. But like I said, that's probably one of the things that like it sucks. It's something that, and I could easily make a phone call, but I get scared off from the phone call sometimes based on the way things were before. So I just can't do it. But I just can't do it.
Right.
Yeah. And time, like you said, time might change that. So that's at
It's
least
been a long time. I don't know if it's going to change.
Yeah.
It's almost like that grace period's over at this point. Now it's just, I don't know, just a weird thing.
I will validate and say that everything is kind of resurfaced new over the last couple of years with the
Just it coming to a complete.
right, like now it's at a complete, right? And even in my opinion, I really don't think it's anywhere where it should be with the sentencing and all that stuff, but at least it's come to a closure. And so I would almost venture to say that 2023 was the that was the beginning of day one, right? Like, that final aspect of it.
Yeah. Like I said, it was tough just, hearing things, knowing things, having people ask you questions, get your head doing certain things. I'll never really have a true opinion on what happened and why it happened. I kind of always say, there's enough opinions out there on that. I know what I know, and that's, it is what it is. But, especially too, like, the thing I always hated was, all these like news networks calling me all the time. I think when you grow up watching TV, you always want to be on it. And like, it was a very big turnoff to ever even talk to these people. And most of the time I just said, talk to this person in the hobby, talk to that person in the hobby. The only, I guess, difference with the one that I did that I really didn't want to do, and I'm sure I did a shitty job because I tried not to say anything so they wouldn't use me at all. But, the people they were bringing on to represent Ben, I thought was just not a good representation of them. And they let me pick who they would bring on for reptile people. So I did that one because of that. And like I said, I'll never watch it. I tried watching one of the other ones. I couldn't do it. But like I said, I always avoided wanting to do them, but the couple people they were bringing on just weren't really the right people. And that was just the leverage I had, I guess, over it. And, wasn't because I wanted to do it. I just really didn't want the other people doing it, I guess is the way of saying it. So, you had Chad Brown on that one. Megan Kelly came on that one. Just felt like people that, guys like, Mike Wilbanks and guys like Chad Brown got to see Ben come up in the hobby. They got to see this little kid show up with the book bag with the money in it that you hear about every once in a while. Like, these older guys, could not respect because, he looked, his presentation made it seem like he'd been doing it forever.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, it whole fucking can of worms, man. But I don't know, man. And another thing that I regret, and maybe in this next chapter I'll make time for, but I always wanted to do something in his name. People in this hobby die, and we stop talking about them. I thought of doing something nonprofit in the name of Anacondas. Maybe doing something every year where I could raise a little bit of money in his name, donate it to a research facility in South America, or just something where it kind of keeps it going, keeps a tradition. I'm 7 years in, I haven't started a tradition yet. The little things like that. I just would hate if he got completely forgotten. That's really it. Because like I said, with me saying that a lot of breeders have a 5-year shelf life, there's a lot of people in a couple years that don't even. There's a lot of people a couple years ago didn't even know you were talking about when you brought up Ben.
Yeah.
Well, that was the whole motivation of the episode. I mean, a lot of our Patreon members kind of inspired the episode and told us to do it, and a lot of people
they know of Retic Ghost, but they don't know where Retic comes from. Yeah,
exactly. And to be honest, I took a lot of pride and pleasure in diving deep into it and asking people what they knew about him and getting to on a surface level just know what he meant to the community. It was very meaningful for me to be able to do that. And yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that he's someone that, and it's good hearing it from someone like you that had a relationship with him, that, you know, he's not someone that should be forgotten ever.
Well, like I said, he was a unique person along the way, and you know, you saw the impact it had, and it wasn't even just how it happened. I mean, there was an impact when the hobby didn't have that guy anymore.
Yeah.
But no, like I said, I mean, there will be. I mean, we just lost Tom Harbin, if I'm saying that right. Sometimes I mispronounce his last name. Um, you know, I can go on and on, but it's just part of the hobby, and you know, the hobby's so big, and you know, this, I always talk about how new the hobby is in a sense. You know, it really got rolling in the early 2000s, other than some diehards in the 90s, but there's not a lot of guys left from the 90s. Um, so, you know, we all kind of know each other, and as big as the hobby is, it's not even that big in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I, again, just want to thank you for sharing that. I know that you mentioned early on, it's not something that you talked a lot about, so appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not always my information to pass on. And, you know,
Right.
it always depends on the questions, I guess you could say.
Right. And that's kind of just why I wanted to leave it open, right? Didn't want to try to get information out. Just,
Yeah. I said I would talk about this beforehand. You guys did just fine. You did a great job, guys.
If you don't mind, I kind of want to ask a couple, not ask a couple questions, but I guess going back into the topic of, you know, vending and doing Reptile Expos to kind of just wrap up the episode, I wanted to just, you talked a lot and you gave a lot of advice and you spoke a lot, but I guess if you had to, like, someone wanted to vend their first Reptile Expo, like, what is the number one bread and butter advice that you would give them?
Enjoy it. It's a blast. I mean, you got to go into it being happy. You got to go into it excited. There's very rare I go to a show I'm not enjoying myself. If you're going to these shows and not enjoying yourself, there's probably something wrong with you. But you know, just, you know, I guarantee, like I said before, the first show you vend is not the first show you've ever been to. You've been on that side of the table. Just think about that when you're on the other side of the table. You know, present the way that you'd expect somebody to present. You know, use other people's accomplishments to, you know, do positive things on your end. So like I said, just look good at the shows, be good to people, wear deodorant.
Good point.
Maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to go back to it one more time. And this is the only way I can put it. You just got to find your brand. You got to figure out what it is about your personality that is a good reflection on you, that maybe helps with your sales. Your biggest reflection on you might be the quality of your animal, to where you don't have to have a sales pitch. Some of these things will sell themselves. So if you're somebody who maybe doesn't want to talk for hours, you know, maybe find a species you don't have to talk to people for hours about. Like, or again, you know, maybe all you know is that species. And when people pick up the passion on that, why wouldn't they want to work with you?
Right.
So like I said, read the room, find a brand that's very unique to you and own it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
That's good.
Well, just before we head out of here, let me get it in the right screen. I just want everyone to head over to your business page, you know, on Instagram, make sure they're following you there. Any other plugs you want to give out in terms of how to reach out to you?
Well, honestly, I guess just keep an eye out for me in podcasting. I found out there's 350 new podcasters, so I plan on touching every one of them this year, maybe.
Okay.
I've got Blazing Blue Tongues tomorrow night with Alex, and we're doing Joe Ball. And I think on Friday I got William Philippek and Tim Bailey.
Nice.
Okay. Well, make those rounds, and you know, it sounds like you have a busy show schedule outside of just your expos.
Yeah, just trying to enjoy this. I'll be honest, I'm very fascinated by the podcast scene, and where I've been really loosey-goosey about it in the past. I really want to create a nice little brand for myself in it. So I'm still trying to figure out what that's going to be for everybody, but definitely going to be doing a lot more podcasts, I think, over the next couple of years.
Yeah, you know, it's funny as you mentioned this at the beginning, but I was like, I never listened to a single podcast prior to starting this. But for some reason, I was like, let's start a fucking podcast. Now I listen to a bunch of them in a bunch of different genres, right? And the one that I least listen to is snakes as well, or reptiles. Yeah. But yeah, Dave, man, it was awesome having you on.
No, I appreciate you guys inviting me. I'm sorry I missed out on that one episode when I was in Daytona. It was just, I think I was up for like 36 hours, and man, I was ambitious to go out on that balcony to do it, but there was nothing left in me.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you.
No sweat at all. I totally understood. So, Dave, we'll catch you at one of the next shows that we're at.
Cool. Appreciate you. Don't forget about my pit vipers.
Hey, no,
Yeah.
never.
Take it easy, man.
I appreciate you guys.
All right, guys, a lot of good advice in that episode. Be sure that if you want to get a little bit more into the in-depth conversation, you either leave us a comment, or if you want to get into it with the community, we have our Patreon link in the description, or patreon.com/the Retic Lounge. Lucas, anything else?
No, thanks everyone for listening. And I learned a lot during this episode. Vending is something that I've been wanting to do, and getting to pick its brain for someone who vends so much is always just worth listening to. So I'm excited for this episode to go public and for people to gain some information on it.
Awesome. We'll catch you on 109.
See you, everyone.